Hi, I'm Mike Griffin. I'm the chairman of the UMRCC Veg Ad Hoc Committee. I really appreciate you coming in here and watching the vegetation protocol video today. Before we do our sampling, it will help you in collecting our data on the UMRCC. We started collecting the vegetation sampling on 2 pools a year for the UMRCC in 2000. This video will show you how to do it and help us, and we really appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, I'm Lisa Reid, and I'm the wildlife biologist at the Upper Mississippi River National Wildlife and Fish Refuge, Winona District, and I'm just going to go over the Aquatic Veg Stratified Random Sampling Data Sheet and the protocol, so that hopefully this will make it a little bit easier when you go out in the field and try to collect data. We are tied off with 2 anchors so that when we actually do the veg raking, it'll keep the boat from moving too much. It'll still move some, so you got to be aware of that. But now that we're at our point, we look at our GPS unit, and on our data sheet, right in the upper right corner, there's a point space to put the easting and northing, and then the zone. You're always in zone 15 pretty much anywhere on the Mississippi River. Accuracy is the possible error related to the number and orientation of the satellites that your GPS unit is picking up. This number is typically found on the satellite page of your GPS, but check with someone who knows before you get into the field. And don't confuse it with how far you are from your point. Method tells if your accuracy is recorded as PDOP or FOM and whether the coordinates are being digitally corrected in the field. The codes for this box are found on the original data sheet in the LTRM procedures. Typically, you'll record either a G, which means PDOP is being used by your GPS. Okay, so then there's also a place to put your point number that you're at. That's called site ID. It goes right in there. Your location name is going to be the pool that you're on. If you're doing a UMRCC veg sampling with all the agencies together, then you'll also include the cluster or the area number that you're in, the area number. Then you'll have your date, month, day, year, goes in there. And then these 2, detritus and substrate, are recorded for the point you are at and only get recorded once for that point. Under recorder code, put your initials, and if you are on an UMRCC veg sampling effort, also add the area number you are assigned to. This will make it easier to contact you if there are questions about what you've recorded on the data sheet. Looks like this won't pull up anymore, so we can't use the marks on here. We have to use the depth, which is fine. And you're looking for cover of the N, which is non-rooted floating plants, so all your duckweed fall into that. And we have some duckweed around here. Duckweed has to be at least 5% to count it. And then if you're saying what kind of numbers do I put for cover, you have this area on your data sheets called reminder information, and this is just a plethora of information. So you look for cover, finding it there, and you see you have 0 through 5. So if you don't have any duckweed, it would get a 0, no duckweed. Then it is broken down into various percentages. So 1 to 20% cover is a 1, all the way down to a 5, which is 81 to 100%. So here in this area, there's a little bit of duck cover, and likely it would fall into the 1 to 20% category. So then you would put a 1 for the non-rooted floating. Then there's the F category, which is floating rooted. So that would be like your white water lily. So we have some of that here. And again, we come up with a percent cover in that 2-meter ring. And we're going to say it's between 20 to 40, or it's 21 to 40. So that's a 2. Now E is for emergent. And we don't have any emergence out here, so that would get a 0, because under cover 0 means none. Now you're going to say, how do you know if it's a N or an F or an E? Well, that's where some of the cheat sheets come in. And we have sheets of plants. And one column in there lists whether it's algae, emergent, non-rooted floating. S is submersed, which is basically what we're looking for in this protocol. And F, floating. So you look up the species, and the white water lily, I have to find on here, is this Ni2, and that's an F, so it goes under floating. If you had cattail, either the common or the narrow leaf, you look there, it's an E, so that goes under emergent. And we also have further cheat sheets. And the back of the data recording cheat sheet has the different plant categories, although they call it a little different. So free floating plants, that would be your N category. Your rooted floating plants would be your F. The emergents are E, and submersed are S. Notice under cover, we did not include any submersed plants, because the cover is to show how much shading the area is getting for the submersed plants to grow or not grow. Okay, so another category in this site information is the actual stratum. And if you go to the reminder information, you find actual stratum down in this corner. And the only thing they say there is LND equals land. So if you're on land, LND goes in there. If you're not on land, leave it blank. And then we'll get the detritus and substrate when we start raking the area. The other thing that you could do when you are looking at your 2 meters is write the various species down in here, and it'll save your time a little bit of time later. So then we have that area finished, and now we're going to go to the subsampling area information, and we have basically 2 sections on there, here and then below with all the species information. So you can see it says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's different areas that you rake around the boat. 6 areas get 1 rake, 1.5 meters along the bottom, and you have a cheat sheet that shows you about where they should be, but you can also just think it needs to be divided evenly around the boat. And so then you end up with 1 on each off the bow, 1 off each side, and then 1 off the back end. When you're raking, always rake in the same, give the same areas of the boat the same number. You can start at different spots, but keep it the same number. Okay, I'm at point number 1, and I'm going to rake 1.5 meters out, so which is about 4.5 feet out. And what you want to do is look and see what kind of plants you can see in that 1.5 meter by the width of the rake, and those you'll tell the recorder. And I'll go back to the sheet in a minute and show you where that information goes. So then we rake along the bottom. You can see the plants pulling up there. Then when you get to the boat, you can look at your water depth. If your rake is marked correctly, if it's not, you can use a depth pole, which we brought along too. And then you can see the boat's moving a little bit. Then you have to turn the rake 180 degrees so that when you pull the vegetation up, it doesn't fall off. And you end up with a rake like this. Okay, and then anything that isn't already over the rake needs to be put there, but if it's something that's hanging over here, but that's already on there. And you do not, you'll tell the recorder that you got the lotus, the white water lily, I'm sorry. The split is the giveaway. That doesn't get any numbers because this part of the thing of the protocol is for submerged vegetation. Well, I should say it gets a 1 on the rake. Then the rest of the vegetation, you need to see where it's falling on the rake. There's some algae in there, you want to write that down. If vegetation falls anywhere from the top of the rake tines or over the top to the first line from the top, a 5 would be recorded. If vegetation is from the first line from the top to the second line from the top on the rake tines, a 4 would be recorded, and so on down the rake tines. If no submerged aquatic vegetation is raked, a 0 is recorded under submerged plant density. Okay, so we'll go back to the data sheet and kind of backtrack a little bit. We're at our subsample area 1, so we're saying habitat QA. I have no idea what that is. Let's go over to the reminder information, and we see habitat QA blank. You leave it blank if it's aquatic. You put a T in there if it's terrestrial or land. So we're definitely in aquatic, so we're going to leave that blank. Then the water depth, we look at our water depth before we pull the rake up and then put our number in there. It's to the 10th. And then our submerged plant density. This is just submerged plant species, so you took off the white water lily, aren't including that, and we wouldn't include algae in there. Sometimes algae can be a significant amount. But so this one ended up being a 3. And how do I get that number? I say plant density. Let's look under the reminder information. And we find plant density 0 means there isn't any submerged plants. If it goes up to the 1 on the rake, it's 1 to 20. 2 is 21 to 40%. 3 goes up to 3, then it's 41 to 60%. So we basically look, is it between or below the 1 mark, the 2 mark, the 3 mark, and we got it at the 3 mark. So we put 3 in there. Then we go down to the species information, and we had the white water lily. So we find the species codes, and that's in that nice sheet where we were finding the emergent and the floating. And we find the white water lily, which is Nymphia tuberosa or some such thing, and we see that it's NYTU. Some of you might know NYOD, but all the stuff that we're going to record here will be NYTU. Then the other species that we got on the rake was the coontail. So we find coontail, Ceratophyllum demersum, CEDE4. So we get to put that into the species code. And that's pretty much all that we had in here. You go through and look through the rake since that was all we had in there, it's going to have the same number as the submerged plant density of 3. And that's on the rake. If you're not sure what to put under V in the species information section, then look at the reminder information section, and you will see that leaving it blank means none of that species is visible in the transect you will be raking. If you can see a species in the transect, then write a 1 in the V column. Sometimes a species is present but not visible due to turbidity, water depth, or other plants. The V column is left blank in those situations. Okay, now, if there were 2 different submerged plant species on here, then you would have to either imagine or actually put them on the rake separately and record the plant densities under, again, looking at where it falls on the rake as you even it out all across here. And notice that we left all that hanging down. We don't take that and try and put it on. It's already on the rake, draped over it. If it had been draped here or here, we would have put it on here. Okay, so we do that for each of the 6 subsample areas at this point. That's what all these are for up here. And then we do have duckweed. We actually have 2 kinds of duckweed out there, and we record those under species code. We have the Lemna minor, and we have I've forgotten one. The SPPO. The big duckweed. Spirodella polyrhiza. So we put that in there. But for duckweed, we don't fill out any of these numbers under 1 through 6. We just go to additional species and put a 1 for each of the duckweeds. In the last column on the right, under species information, the code for the percent cover of each floating leaved and emergent species in the 2-meter ring around the boat is recorded. So estimate the percent cover, look in the reminder information section of the data sheet to determine the code, then record the code. Sometimes observers mistakenly record F or E in this column, but if you think about it, that doesn't make sense because we would be able to figure that out based on the species that you've recorded. What we don't have a clue about when we're looking at the data sheets in the office is how much of each of those species covers the 2-meter ring and hence shades anything below it. Okay, when you're doing the water depth, you want to make sure that when you're taking it, if you use your rake to get it, and you have a collapsible rake, that your rake is pulled all the way out, because as you can see here, we still have 1 segment down, so it's saying with the bottom of the rake at the bottom of the water there, it's 1.4 meters. Well, we know that that's not 1.4 meters, so be thinking about that when you're doing it so you don't get messed up water depths. We also got, and some of the boats may have depth poles, and you may find it easier just to take your depth reading with it, and you just put it to the bottom and record. Okay, we have a few more things to take care of. Back up at the site information, we still have detritus and substrate to take care of. And substrate, you're going to notice either when you're raking, if you get any sediment or substrate on the rake itself, then you can use that. Or if it's not coming up with that, when you pull the anchor. And then to figure out what code to put in there, you go over to our reminder information, and it has substrate and lists 1 through 6 with the various kinds of substrate. Okay, we had one more question about the substrate on the rake. What if nothing comes up on either the rake or the anchor? Then the person raking should notice if it was gravelly when they were raking or sandy, and because neither of those are going to come up on the rake, and so that's how you get that information. Then detritus, if we come over to the reminder information, detritus means if you have a 1 there, it means it's present. If you leave it blank, it means it's absent, and detritus is just like decaying organic material, and that's again something else that you might pull up on your rake. If you pull it up on your rake on any of the 6 samples, it gets a 1 in there. Same with the substrate's only recorded 1 time in any of the 6 samples. And then the last thing that you need to record on here is your coordinates, and you can't have moved outside of your 10 meters or 30 feet from your point. So you want to check that before you pull away. Usually that's going to happen if you're not anchored well, or if it's really windy and it's pulling the anchors, that kind of thing. Oh, and I forgot, for the UMRCC veg sampling, a lot of times you're taking transparency tube readings, so that'll go in this box up here, and they'll go over how to get those readings on that day. So then, just as to kind of provide some more background information, realize that every boat crew will have the complete protocol in it, and then there's a number of cheat sheets, and one goes over all the steps of data recording, and another goes over all the steps of data collection, and then there's one with the different plant species in there, and it gives the common name, the scientific name, the code, and whether it's emergent, floating leaf, non-rooted floating leaf, or submersed. And then there's a last sheet, which I forgot about this one. It gives some examples, like what if you don't have any aquatic veg at your site. And so you can look at that. There's a code for no aquatic veg, no NO, AQ, VG, and then all the R's in that subsample area get a 1. Now if you only have one subsample area out of your 6 that has no aquatic veg, it still gets that code, and under like subsample 1 you would put a 1. I think I have a better copy of that. I don't know if it'll show up any better. There might be some sites where you can't get to them, or we've had some that are under barges, so you're not going to be doing those. So that would get a no sample, and that's a NOSMPL. And then you just have a 1 under all the subsample areas where you can't get to. Some you might be able to, and others not. If the site's on land, then we talked about before where the actual stratum is the LND, but then look at your cheat sheet and it'll show you all the other columns that need filled in. If you can remember, the Habitat QA would be a terrestrial, which is different from the others. So just check all the different categories under there and fill them in on the sheet. So just get comfortable with the cheat sheets and you should be good to go. There's always cell phones or radios to contact other people. And then species, what if you come across one that you have no idea what it is? Hopefully you have some field guides with you and you can look at it that way. If not, make sure you bring some Ziploc bags and put them in the Ziploc bag with a little bit of water, and you can bring them back to the landing, and hopefully there's someone there, especially on the UMRCC efforts, somebody there that can identify it. Okay, so just as a quick review, you have all your GPS coordinates here right when you first get there, and then here's where they go when you're leaving. You have your point number, date, the covers for the non-submersed species in their groups around the 2 meter, the recorder code, detritus and substrate that you find off the rake. Then you come down and split your boat into 6 areas and record the water depth, and you do your 1.5 meter rake and record the submersed plant density in this column. Down in this area down here, you record all the species that you're finding and put in the codes that you get off of your plant cheat sheet. and then whether they're visible before you rake in your transect, and then how much is on the rake itself. And remember, emergent and floating rooted under rake always get a 1, and then the other ones are based on how much vegetation is on the rake. Additional species, if you have duckweed, it's always a 1. If you have other plants in your 2-meter ring that aren't on your rake, they get recorded with the species code, and then a 1 in additional species. You won't have anything here because you didn't record them. Then under the 2-meter ring cover for the floating lead and the emergence, you record the cover for each of the species under here. So following this information up here, you should do great. And here we are, 110 heat index. We got a zipped up life vest.
Hydrophytes gon' get wet.